Alright, I would like to start off this first video of preparing this car for Bathurst to apologise to every single person that told me I need to put a fiberglass dashboard in the car and that I'll regret it, and I thought you were full of crap. I thought you guys were just talking out your ass and thinking, you know what, I don't want to spend the money. I've got a perfectly fine dash in the car. Well, I bit the bullet and purchased a fiberglass dash. And I tell you what, I am eating my words right now. Let's check it out. Alright, so backstory. Building this car. Funds were tight for me building this car. It took me a lot of time to build this car, and putting a fiberglass dash in it was not something I really wanted to spend money on. I redid the dash that was in the car, made it look schmick. In fact, it's a really good looking dash for what it is, but it is extremely heavy. I remember putting it in thinking, man, this thing's weighs a ton. So everyone's like, you regret not putting a dash in the car, fiberglass dash, and I was like, you know what, whatever, who cares? Well, I just picked up my new fiberglass dash. I thought, you know what, for Bathurst, I need to get this car as light as possible, as well as myself, but I'm going to bite the bullet and pick up a fiberglass dash. So I contacted the guys at Replica Glass here in Brisbane, and they got me this dash. They did it for me. It took about 3 weeks, but I only got the half dash. I didn't get the full one. This thing, I went and picked it up the other day, and I couldn't believe the guy was carrying it in 2 hands. I think, oh look, still looks a bit heavy. He handed it to me. And I brought it home and I put it on some scales, the little luggage scales you measure your weight of your bag when you travel. 2.5 kilos. This thing is insanely light. We've got a problem with it though, and I'll show you what that is in just a second, but I'm really keen to get this in the car because I think it'll make a big difference to our overall weight racing. But let me show you what the problem is. All right, so here's the dash. Now, if you know anything about these dashes, they're insanely light, but they come with a gloss kind of gel coat finish on them, which doesn't make it really suitable for race car purposes. Now, I know some people just stick it in the car like this and say, that looks good. I really don't want the sun beating down through the windscreen onto this and into my eyes. So, we're going to paint this. Now, normally, I would flock it. And I did that with my other car. If you look here, I've flocked the dash. And look, it's pretty good. It looks really good. But for the price of flocking it, it's about $180 for the kit to flock a dashboard. And I think I could spend that money elsewhere getting the car ready for Bathurst. So I've bought some matte black, or some flat black spray paint, and we're going to give this a quick coat and see if we can just dull it as much as possible before we get it in the car. There's a few things we need to do to it before we get in the car. I need to drill 2 holes here for some gauges, figure out some holes that will go around our roll cage, and we'll take those measurements off the other dash when we pull it out. But we're going to get this thing painted, ready to go. And to do that, we need to give it a light sand first. Now, I went and spoke to some guys. They said if you give it a really light sand, of some wet sand it, just scuff it up a bit and then give it a good paint, it should come up $1 million. So, that's the goal. We're going to give this thing a bit of a sand and get it in the car. But I tell you what, you can lift this thing up super easy, one hand, nice and light, and it'll be interesting to see what the difference is between this one here and the dash that's in the car. Now, when I pull this one out, I'm going to pull everything out that's part of the dash, including the center surround in the middle. That's actually galvanized steel down in there, which is not light. And all the metal bracketry and stuff that I don't need for the new one. I think the new one just bolts straight into the car, so that'll be good. So we'll sand this, paint this, pull this one out, put this one in after we drill the holes for the gauges, and see what the difference is. So that's all scuffed up now. sanded it back with, I think, 1200 grit, which should be enough. It's nice and tacky now. Put some wax and grease remover over it, and now it's good to start spray painting and see what kind of finish we can come up with. Hopefully it's a nice matte finish. If the guys at the paint store, the expertise is correct, it should come up pretty well. So we'll give it a go now. So the guys at the shop said I should, Bunnings, should I put this can in a cup of warm water to heat the contents up so it's easier to mix and to get a better spray, and it'll be more matte, more of a matte finish. So using my wife's beautiful Yeti cup, in she goes. They said to sit there for 10 minutes or so to warm everything up. We'll see how it all pans out. If it explodes, we'll my wife will get a new Yeti cup for Christmas. Might just put it somewhere safe, maybe over here, just in case it does blow up. Like all good professional spray paint booths, done. Backyard job. So we might give it another wipe down with a wax and grease remover before we start painting, and then give it a spray. We just got to wait for that paint to mix in first. Right, so we've got a second coat done now. I mean, is it perfect? Oh, probably not. But it's certainly a whole lot better than the shiny surface we had before. So I'll only be looking at it from essentially that angle there, which is pretty damn good. So we'll wait for that to dry, see how it comes up. If we need to do one more coat, we can. I've got some more paint there, but that is pretty good so far. I'm happy with that. And while the dash is drying, I got the steering column surround out. And I gave that a paint to match the dash. And the only thing left now is I need to get a new dash cluster surround for just in there, because mine's flocked at the moment, and I'll get painted up to match the dash and get all that taken care of. But it's almost time, probably in the next couple of days, probably after Christmas actually, which is 2 days away, to pull the old dash out, take some measurements, make some adjustments in this dash, and put it all in. But that's a great start. That's nice. It's nice. Looks shiny, but it's actually quite matte when you hold it up in the shade, especially. It is now Boxing Day, and after a very successful Christmas day, having family, friends, and eating a bit of food, we are back out working on this car. And side note, I went to America. I came back at 145 kilos. I've done about 7 or 8 days on the treadmill. Just watching what I eat, and I am down 7.5 kilos. Massive win. Pardon me. But it's now time to pull the dashboard out of this car, so I can put the new one in, take some measurements, cut some holes so it fits around the roll cage. Now, I did just take out the center panel that was in the car. Now, this is, I'd have to say, about 1 mil thick Galvabond steel. And what I did is I actually flocked it when I did the dash. And I pulled it out and I cut some holes to put some gauges in it. When I put my new little AIM Solo in. But this thing is heavy. The reason why I had to pull this out is I had to take some measurements of the gauge pods at 52 mil and then test fit them onto some little angled wedges that I've got here. These ones here that'll go onto our new dash, so they point slightly towards me in the car. So now it's just a point of getting everything else out of the car, lowering the steering column, things like that, undoing a bunch of zip ties, and getting it all ready to... I actually have to undo a part of the roll cage to get it out. I'm going to do that. So, time to start undoing stuff and get that ready to pull the dash out. After a lot of fluffing around and taking the roll cage half apart, we now have the dash out. And look at the mess we have down there. So the next couple of days, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of all the zip ties, drop the cabling down, sort it out, tidy it up, and then get it ready to put the new dash in after it takes some measurements. But I want to tidy this up because when I started putting all the extra instruments in and switches, I couldn't take the dash out because it would be a lot easier to take it out if I didn't have these bars here. But what I've had to do is take the bar out across the top, the side, and the A-pillar bar, the crossbar, pretty much take that corner of the roll cage apart just to get the dash out. So we'll tidy all this up, and then might have to go get some zip ties and stuff like that. And then once I get it all tidied up, I'm going to start the car to make sure it all works and functions before I put the dash in. And then once the dash is in, I'll get it all squared away. I've got to also drill some holes in the dash for the screws to go through, but that'll be fine. We can take care of that. So, bit to do, a lot of fun, but hopefully this will make life much, much easier. All right, I'm going to go inside and have some food, have a feed, and then tomorrow I'm going to go get some supplies, get some zip ties, things like that. Zip ties, and then start working through the cabling, all that kind of stuff, and then get this dash squared away, drill some holes in it, put the gauges in, get all that taken care of and squared away, and then get the dash back in, and then I can start putting the cage back together. Bit of a process just to go fast and get light, but it's all the fun and games of race cars. Back for another day, and this is where we have our dash at the moment. So we've got our holes cut out for the roll cage on both sides here now. We've test fit it with the roll cage on one side. We had to pull out the cage on half the side, so it should all line up. Got our gauge pods in there for our water temp and oil pressure, and I just 3D printed up some little spaces that go in behind there, and that keeps it tilts them about 10 degrees toward the driver, so I can actually have a better vision of the gauges. And then got to put our dash cluster in. Now this one didn't come with a hole, so I drilled a hole there, and then there's some little holes that I've drilled here for the gauge, and I'm just going to zip tie those in, and it actually sits in nice and perfectly in those holes. So I'll put the gauge cluster in now, put the cable ties through those holes and keep that in place. It actually rests on the back up here, which is really nice. Then we can put the front fascia on, and then that'll be good to go in. Then we can start organising all the wiring inside the car, tidying that up, get this in, and start putting the roll cage back together. So it's a bit of a long process for the to change the dashboard out. I can't imagine what it would be like if I didn't have a bolt-in cage. So I'm very, very thankful I do. But let's get the gauge cluster in, zip tie that up, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. There we go, that is in. Now, as I got this thing in there, okay, it's nice and firmly in there. It's got 2 zip ties there and 2 down there. I thought, I may have to take that back out because I will have to connect up the dash and all the connectors on the back of it. I will not be using speedometer. It's mainly for temps and for fuel gauge, and we have to run this as part of our regulations. It has to be in the car. My new AIM Solo actually has my speed and RPM and stuff on there, so I don't actually need to see what speed I'm doing. I can see that all the computer actually sits in front of this. So we have to run it, it's in there, and then we'll get it in the car, but I may end up having to take that out. We'll just see how we go, see if I can actually put the connectors in without taking that out. But now I've got to go figure out all the wiring in this car and get that tidy, because it's going to be an absolute pain in the butt. All right, we are back out here for, I think it's now the 4th day working on this, and not because we're not trying, it's been Christmas break and just trying to get stuff done. I'm in a singlet today. It is hot, it is humid, and to be perfectly honest, I'd rather be comfortable than look good. So Done a bunch of this car. We've sized up the new dash. We've put new shifter linkage cables in. Everyone was telling me how hard that would be. It's actually really simple, especially with now that when you take the dash out, you've got all that room to work with. And we've got a new dash ready to go in, gauges put in ready to go. And our wiring is pretty much tidied up. And I didn't take a photo of what it looked like beforehand, before we tied it up, but it was an absolute schmozzle. Pretty much when I did put all the gauges in, I had the dash in the car, so I had to work around the dash and couldn't see where I was putting stuff and feeding wires through. And what I came to realize is that by doing the wiring for all the gauges, the switches and stuff like that, I was actually feeding wires through loops of other wires. And I pretty much had to undo or unplug a lot of the stuff that I'd done, untangle it all, and work from one side of the car to the other, placing everything up under the dash so it's out of the way. And now when the dash is on, it's actually really neat, apart from the cables running from the switches and the ignition switch in the console, which I'll show you now. Alright, so there is a bunch of like cable ties and a bunch of rubbish and stuff in the car because we're still tidying up, but we always had our relays there and our fuse block, things like that. But previously there was that center panel in here, and I hid a lot of garbage behind there, a lot of wiring and stuff like that. That's now being tidied up. I've tried to put as much up underneath the dash as possible. When the new dash goes in, you cannot see any of that wiring. A lot of this stuff over there by the steering column. Once I get the dash in, the steering column back up, that will then be tucked up neatly as well. And then the ECU will sit underneath the steering column as well. So that'll be all that taken care of. Tidied up some wiring down here. There's two plugs there, the black leads that feed into our gauges. They'll be going up underneath the dash, which once I plug in the gauges, they'll be hidden. And then it's a good clean. And there was a bunch of sound deadening on the firewall all the way back through there. I've scraped all that off and saved us some kilos. Now, I'll talk about how much weight we've actually saved by doing this fiberglass dash right now. So in total, so far, including changing the dash, me working out on the treadmill, and taking some weight from the sound deadening out of the car, we are down total 17 kilos in this car. So now with me in this car, we'll be 17 kilos lighter. There's still some stuff we could probably do, including getting some weight off me. But yeah, that is a phenomenal amount. So just say I lost another 3 kilos, or we found 3 kilos in the car, which there's probably some stuff underneath the car that I could pull out. That alone, 20 kilos would take us down to about 1,050, possibly even lower, depending on which scales you go on, which is a huge amount. So by just doing this, I know it's a pain in the backside because you've got to take a bit of the roll cage out, things like that. We're saving almost 20 kilos, which is huge for me. So I'm glad we're doing it. I believe the dash was about $475, $480. It weighs in at 2.5 kilos. My dash weighed in at around 7.5, just over 7.5 kilos. So saving weight there, taking weight off the firewall from the sound deadening, and then getting me on the treadmill as well. So well on our way, saving some weight. But now it's time just to get the dash in the car, get all that squared away, button everything up, and then see if these shifter linkages actually work. I'll put it on some jack stands and I'll run it through the gears. I know the car runs because as I was doing all this, when I tuck stuff away, I'd start the car and make sure it all works. So car works, we just got to button it all up. All right, look, it's been a couple of days, and in all fairness, after getting this in, I spent 4 days on this, just trying to get it right. The wiring alone took me, I want to say an entire day, if not a day and a half. Not because it was complicated, just because it was an absolute mess behind the old dash. And I got that tidied up, had to pull things out, straighten it up, and now we've got it in. And I've just put a few little things back in, like the footrest. There is 2 things I still need to wire in. One is the fan for the windscreen demister that I've got, which is not difficult. I just need to zip tie that back up and then run the line for it. The other thing is for the radio harness. Put a new radio harness in this car because the GME radio that I was using and the harness that I actually built for it was really great, but the GME failed. And the problem we had is we had one Kenwood, one GME, and some Baofeng. So the common denominator between most of them is that the Baofeng and the Kenwood use the same pinout for the to plug into the actual radio. So I got rid of the GME, got another Kenwood. So the Kenwoods work amazingly. I just have to change over one of the plugs to a male plug on a mini XLR on the push button on the paddles on my steering wheel. So we'll do that, and that'll be all wired in. We can tidy that up. But other than that, everything in here is good to go. So let's check it out. So I've just climbed into the car, and I tell you what, I am absolutely stoked how this thing's turned out. Like, yes, you can see some wiring and stuff down there, but the fact of the matter is now I've lost a stack of weight out of this car just by making this change. Now, at the time of recording this video, I said previously I've lost 18 kilos. Now that I've gone back and had a couple of days off and kept working out, it's down to about 20 kilos. Just by changing the dash, changing a few things, getting rid of some stuff. And I'll actually get more out of it because there's some stuff that I've put in the car, like just little stuff like this pinch weld stuff along here to tidy it up. I can pull that off and lose some weight. Now, I won't on the driver's side. I'll keep it all along here to protect my helmet getting in the car. But I don't need it on the passenger side. So I can get rid of that. You know, just little tiny things that will make life much easier. You know, every gram or every kilogram helps. So if I can get rid of some of this stuff that I don't need, it'll be awesome. So those gauges that I built the wedges for, let me see if I can actually just rest the cable down here. I'll just put it on like so. Turn the kill switch on. Beautiful. Watch this. They are perfect. I can see them clear as day. I can see my water temp and I can see my oil pressure. They are facing me. I don't have to look around the corner because when they're flat, they're not exactly, I've still got this bevel here, this beveled edge that I have to look around, but now I can see those really well. RPM, and the dash pops up. That's all good. So everything I need, water temp, pressure, and then I've got my speed, RPM, and shift light just there. And if I did actually want to put in another gauge, I have space just here that I could put something in, but I don't really need that just yet. But it's I'm stoked. This has come out extremely well. I used to say that we didn't need this. And when I say need this, I thought the stock dash would be perfectly fine because it did everything I wanted to. But when it comes to losing weight out of the car, spend the money, get the weight out. It is a big, big saver. Now, for me, being so heavy, you know, I've got to work out on a treadmill. But for most people, if you want to get that final 5 kilos out of your car and get as light as possible, putting in a fiberglass dash in could be the easiest way you could do that. Now, would it have been easier for me to do this when I was building the car? Absolutely. Did I have the $400 and something to do it then? I didn't. What I am thankful about is I have a bolt-in roll cage that I could pull a corner out and get it in and make it look nice and even and tidy. Just by doing that, I was able to pull the corner out, get it in, bolt the cage back in, and now when I did that, I actually noticed that a couple of the bolts were starting to come loose. So now we've tightened those up, and this thing now is sturdy as. There's no rattles in there. It's really good. But I'll go back and check them all out. I'll probably go for a practice day, take it out, and then go back and check all the bolts at the cage again. But man, super happy with how this all worked out. And even though I've got like a matte dash and I don't have it flocked, I do still have the dash cluster surround that is flocked, and it actually looks half decent next to the matte finish. So I'm pretty stoked about that. So a few little things to do to get this thing buttoned up, ready to go, but we are this close to moving on to checking out all the suspension parts, getting all that taken care of, and then putting on some new parts like a slave cylinder for the clutch, maybe some new rear hubs, things like that. We're ticking along nicely. The next project I'm going to be doing is actually going to be beneficial for both at home and at the track, and we'll see how we go there. But I am stoked this thing, and can I just say, since I've lost some weight, the seat's not as tight, which is kind of nice. So my hips will love me for that. All right, gonna end it there. We're going to get on to the next project very shortly, where I am going to build myself a tyre rack and fuel storage trolley for the track and at home, just to keep things nice and tidy. All right, guys, bit of a mishmatch this one, just getting things put together, but I'll see you next time, and hopefully I'm going to teach myself how to weld and get a trolley put together. I'll see you next time. Cheers, guys. Bye.